It was one of those mornings where the air felt heavy with despair and dew. The kind where the sun rose not in glory, but reluctantly, like it, too, was tired of watching him suffer. Cold grease stained his cracked hands as he stood outside his half-rusted garage shack on the edge of a quiet southern town, staring at the broken, open sign that hadn't lit up in months. Ben Carter, a widowed mechanic and father of a 6-year-old girl with asthma, had barely scraped through another sleepless night. His power had been cut off, the medicine for his daughter was nearly out, and the fridge only held a half bottle of milk and 2 eggs. Yet there he stood, eyes red from exhaustion, heart burning with the weight of promises he still needed to keep. What he didn't know was that this one day, this one broken-down truck that would soon pull into his dusty lot, was about to change everything. Bell, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unseen miracles life can bring, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Rapple of Hope. Your support helps us tell more stories that lift hearts and spark hope. Red Heart. Ben had never been the kind of man who asked for pity. After losing his wife in a tragic car accident 3 years ago, he'd poured every drop of himself into raising little Emma. With no relatives to lean on and a garage that barely made enough to cover their rent, Ben's life had become a quiet war of survival. Emma was his sunshine in an otherwise gray world. She had inherited her mother's warm smile and her father's stubborn spirit, but her fragile health often meant rushed midnight trips to the local clinic and long hours spent worrying how he'd afford the next inhaler refill. Still, Ben never let her see him crumble. He'd sing her lullabies with grease on his cheeks and braid her messy hair with trembling fingers. He was a father who had given up his dreams long ago but never stopped dreaming for his daughter. That morning, as he adjusted the broken fan in the garage to push away the summer heat, a beat-up old Ford truck rattled in from the dirt road. It coughed smoke and wheezed to a halt in front of his workshop. Behind the dusty windshield sat a woman in her late 20s, straw-blonde hair tucked beneath a faded baseball cap, denim overalls, and boots caked with dry mud. Her hands gripped the steering wheel like it held her together. She looked like a local farmer, maybe someone working a family plot, someone struggling like him. Ben waved her in with a tired smile, already imagining how he'd fix the truck with whatever scraps he had left. The woman introduced herself as Riley, in a voice that tried to sound strong but carried the fatigue of someone who hadn't rested in weeks. She told him the truck had broken down while delivering supplies to a shelter she volunteered at. The timing belt was shredded, the radiator was leaking, and the fuel line had seen better days. Ben knew right away this would take hours. She looked embarrassed when she said she couldn't pay him up front. Ben glanced toward the small office where Emma was coloring by candlelight and then looked back at the woman, giving her a nod. He said he'd do it anyway. As he worked through the blazing afternoon, drenched in sweat and stained in oil, Riley sat nearby watching him closely. She offered to help, passing him tools, wiping grease from his brow, and handing him a bottle of warm water from her truck. They spoke little, but there was something sincere in the silence between them. Ben noticed her hands were calloused but clean, her boots expensive despite the mud, and her accent sometimes slipped into something more polished. Still, he didn't question it. People came to this town to disappear, to find peace or rebuild. Maybe she was doing the same. What Ben didn't know was that Riley wasn't just a farmer. She was the only daughter of Grace Whitmore, the founder of one of the largest organic farming empires in the state. Riley had walked away from a life of privilege and pressure to live on her own terms after her mother's death. She had grown tired of shallow parties and boardrooms filled with greedy suits. After a bitter fight with her stepfather over the future of the family legacy, she had left the mansion behind, bought a small piece of land near town, and started over as a volunteer and part-time produce grower. She hadn't told anyone who she was, not because she was hiding, but because she wanted to be seen as Riley, not that Riley Whitmore. The way Ben treated her, without judgment, without asking for anything in return, touched her in a way she hadn't felt in years. She watched him fix the truck like it was his life's calling. His hands moved with purpose, even though they were clearly tired. When he spoke of his daughter, there was pride in his voice, not pity. By sundown, the truck roared back to life, and Ben leaned against it, wiping his hands on a rag that looked like it had seen better days. Riley reached into her pocket and handed him a crumpled thank you note and a promise to return with payment soon. Ben smiled, nodded, and watched as she drove off, thinking she was just another struggling soul trying to do good in a hard world. 2 days later, just as Ben was trying to figure out how to pawn his late wife's necklace for Emma's medicine, a sleek black SUV rolled into the lot. Out stepped Riley, but this time, she wasn't in muddy boots. She wore a crisp white shirt, clean jeans, and beside her stood a sharply dressed man with a clipboard. Riley smiled warmly, handed Ben an envelope thick with cash, and said softly, "I told you I'd come back." Ben blinked in confusion, unsure whether he was dreaming or losing his mind. Riley then explained everything, who she really was, why she had disappeared, and how people like him were the reason she believed in starting over. She didn't just come back to pay. She came back with an offer. Her family's old warehouse on the edge of town was being turned into a community garage, fully funded, with new tools, employee support, and a mission to help local mechanics and single parents build honest lives. She wanted Ben to run it. Tears welled in Ben's eyes, not because of the money or the opportunity, but because someone had finally seen him. Not as a poor, broken man, but as someone worthy of trust, of purpose, of a new chapter. The garage opened 2 months later with a fresh coat of paint, a new sign, and a small plaque near the front door that read, "For those who fix more than machines, who fix hearts, lives, and forgotten dreams." Emma's asthma was under control, Ben had a team of young apprentices he was training, and Riley, well, she came by often. Sometimes to deliver fresh peaches. Sometimes just to see Emma. And sometimes to stand beside Ben as the sun set over the little garage that Hope had rebuilt. Glowing star, if this story touched your heart even a little, please hit the like button, share it with someone who needs hope today, and leave a comment. We read every one. And don't forget to subscribe to Rapple of Hope for more true feeling stories that remind us, there's always light, even in the darkest places. Speech balloon. Backhand index pointing right. Special request, comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words inspire.